Alrighty, we'll get started here. Welcome to halfway through point of MMS. How's everybody doing? Good? Oh, excellent. So this is SDB309, Orchestrating Hyper-V Replica Planned Failover with System Center 2012 SP1. My name is Charles Joy. I'm a Senior Program Manager in the Windows System Center team, and my Twitter handle is here, Orchestrator Guy. I know a lot of you have been tweeting and whatnot during the session, so feel free to give me immediate feedback. I won't be checking it, but I'll check it afterwards. And if you don't want to be public with it, you can troll around in the comments. All right. So what's the session objectives and takeaways? Well, I want you to understand some Hyper-V replica options as they relate to Orchestrator. Articulate the options within System Center 2012 SP1 for orchestrating Hyper-V replica, and identifying what's currently available for orchestrating Hyper-V replica. Key takeaways? Well, the ability to demo or implement System Center 2012 SP1 managed Hyper-V replica solutions. And, well, I already have 56 example runbooks currently available with video demonstration at that address right there. How many are you familiar with the Building Clouds blog? It was mentioned in the keynote. I'm going to switch over to this other machine real quick. This is the automation track for Building Clouds blog. That's where all my stuff goes. It may filter into some other tracks, but I've put a bunch of stuff in there. And this not exact demonstration, a previous demonstration of this is right here. This same content. There's the 56 runbooks, explanations, it's all documented. There's a video. So anything that I've missed or go too fast on can watch here if you have internet. And I put some timestamps in there. So as this is a planned failover discussion, in the case of unplanned failover the internet, my replica is a video, so I will walk through. Hopefully that won't happen. But we'll keep tabs on the internet from time to time. I'll go and check it right now at this website I've been looking at. The amount of it, we're looking pretty bad right now, but we'll see. We'll check back later. Oh boy, I hope everything goes well. I'm in PowerPoint anyway. So intro, real quick. Previously known as the TED team, we're in a state of change, but we still delivered the same stuff. So you may have heard of things like PDT, VMMT. We build real-world solutions. It's a bunch of example runbooks. We have the Building Clouds blog. Our mission is to bootstrap the technical sales force and targeted customer engagements. That's our team. We may be going under some reconstruction and maybe renaming, but this is what we do. We are available at your fingertips. You can learn more at that stuff there. It's more for information for later, but you could look at that. So, on to the actual content. So the example solution that I have before you leverages these following components. System Center 2012 SP1 Orchestrator, Service Manager, Virtual Machine Manager, Windows Server 2012 with Hyper-V Replica, and a bunch of PowerShell. Who's heard of Orchestrator before? Who's used Orchestrator? That's very good, I'm glad. So, very quickly for the people who didn't raise your hand, System Center 2012, it's a System Center 2012 component, formerly known as Opalis. How many of you used Opalis when it was Opalis? Good. It's all about integration, automation, orchestration. It's the glue of the data center, providing the ability to connect most any system/software to any other system/software via APIs. And when it comes down to it, it's the simplification of the data center. It can be the one-stop shop for data center automation and management. How about Hyper-V? Anyone know what Hyper-V is? It's one, okay. So it's a Windows Server 2012 role/feature. It allows for asynchronous replication of Hyper-V VMs. This is straight off the website. So, and when it comes down to it, is any workload, any server workload that can be virtualized in Hyper-V can be replicated. This is a better together story. Orchestrator plus, so this demonstration, I actually did it last year, but it was all about Data Protection Manager and how that helped, the orchestration of Data Protection Manager helped with some of the recovery options. Currently, I'm going to talk about Hyper-V Replica. At Tech Ed, I'll be talking about the next evolution of where that's going. And of course, Windows Azure is an option as well. It's not going to be part of this demonstration. If you come to my Windows Azure session tomorrow, I will show you the movement of a VM from on-prem to the cloud, and then spinning up a VM for that. I'll finish my Channel 9 demo that got cut short by the internet yesterday. So, on to the demonstration. Let's I'm going to switch over. Oh, looks like the internet available is good, so should be good to go. And if you're wondering why I'm using VPN, is so I immediately know when I no longer have internet, when I'm behind the veil of RDP here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick off the first part of the story without the other System Center products for Hyper-V Replica orchestration. It's this runbook here, or set of runbooks here. And it was the first step that I took for creating the orchestrations for Hyper-V Replica. I needed just to be able to say, Orchestrator, execute this PowerShell so I can do a planned failover. Or execute this PowerShell so I could do a test failover. Nothing I'm going to show you here today is for unplanned failover, unless, of course, the internet goes out, and then I'll show you a video. But for now, though, we're going to fail over one machine that I have set up for the demo, and then fail it back, and then we're going to go build on the story from there. To show you a little bit of the infrastructure, I have two hosts, SCDemo 459 and 460, 3 VMs. They're related only by name and by logical placement in this demonstration, but when I get to the later demonstration, you'll see how you can start them up in order because I've put them in a cloud, and that's my collection mechanism for them. You could do things many ways, but I did it via cloud in VMM. For this demonstration, though, I'm going to fail over the SPF test 01 as a planned failover. I'm going to press the button. Well, I'm going to press a button in Orchestrator. It'll do everything else. So we will watch this guy fail over to here. Currently, everything's in normal replication state. What these runbooks do not do is fix bad replication state. So this runs under the idea that things are normal. If they're not, then some manual intervention can be taken. Now, I could have automated all that, and the runbooks are extensible to do that. For these demonstrations, I did not include that. But if I did have a VM that wasn't enabled for replication, it would go through that enable process, do the initial replication, and then kick off the failover. So all of that is included. But for now, everything's in normal, so we're going to go forward. Go back to the runbook. And you can see it takes some parameters. I have a demo pause in there just for waiting to start up the VM. In fact, it used to be, when I was testing this initially, I had it fail it over, and then pause, and then fail it immediately back. But I always forgot that I did that, and since it's automation, by the time I looked at it again, it was already failed back, and it didn't look like it did anything. So more dramatic pause here. I'm going to force it to stop. I've disabled these activities. So primary server, authentication type, VM name, replica port, failover type, whether it's test or planned, and replica server are the things that this runbook takes in. This runbook simply tells that runbook what data is going to be passed. And you can see I didn't hardcode anything here. I'm using the concept of variables. So I don't have to check in and check out of the runbook when I want to just simply change the parameters. So we can see I have a demo pause of 5 seconds because I don't want it to delay the start of a VM for very long, so it's going to be 5 seconds for the delay. I'm going to do a planned failover, and then the rest of the stuff that's important. And then the VM name for the demo for this is SPF test 01, and we'll watch that in a second. So simply I'm going to kick this off, and then we're going to wait for this to initiate, and it already has. Then I'm going to walk you through kind of what it's doing. Currently, it's checking the VM replica state, and that's a sub-run book that I'll get into later. But it's saying, where is that VM? Is it on this host, that host? Who's the primary? Who's the replica server? Because it's going to use that to go forward. Because if it fails and says, this is not even enabled, it goes down that bottom route, the orange, and says, well, I have to enable replication and kick off the initial replication and then move on. Then I'm making a decision what failover type it is, planned or test. If it's test, it goes down this route, and it simply spins up a test on the other side. We're not doing that. That's not very impressive. The blue line, the light blue line, is what we're actually going to go towards, and that is kicking off the planned failover. We can see it's already there. So if we check in Hyper-V, you can see it's already off on host 1, and it's currently going through the process of moving things. You can see it's in a warning state because it's in process. And if we sat here, we could watch the status. It'll flicker by with, there it is, merge in progress, succeeded. I'm not doing anything. Orchestrator's doing all that. Well, PowerShell and Orchestrator's doing all that. In a couple seconds, it'll start this up. While it's doing that, I'll go into the runbook that's actually being initiated here, which is 1.3.1 HVR plan VM failover. And it's this one. You can see it's running and where it is in the process. And this is happy path stuff, all green across the top, executing runbooks that are below at a different level. And currently it is it's finishing up. It's actually started it, so let's go see. And it is started on the new host. I have it set to auto log on because when I was doing demonstrations, I really don't like typing passwords. So it's set to auto log on. And then a bunch of other stuff happens that we're going to get to in the other demonstration, like updating that text file automatically via a scheduled task that looks at registry values that are updated via KVP. So I know that's a big statement, but we'll get to it later. So all this process, you can see it's on. I didn't live migrate it, even though I could have. I mean, that's just a different way to do it. But I basically initiated a planned failover from host 1 to host 2, and we're good to go over here. So why would you do this? Well, what if you had a bunch of VMs that were set up for replication and you wanted to test quarterly if I could fail them over successfully and test something on the other side? That's a good reason. But you'd probably want some management around that, and not just, let's just do this willy-nilly. I don't care. Let's test one at a time. You probably want to do it more controlled. Probably want to put some service management around it. Probably want to do a group of VMs at one time. And that's where the next demonstration comes into play. But before that, I want to fail this back. And it's going to do the same process. In fact, the way I built this is I can execute, it knows where it is. Remember, I checked for state here? So I've built these to be rerunnable. One of the key best practices for orchestrators to build things to be rerunnable. And if I execute this again, no changes, I didn't touch anything, it will now recognize that that VM with that name is on the replica server, or its current primary server is the old replica server, and it'll swap them. So in a matter of however long the first one took, we're going to have it failed back on the other side, in which case I could then kick off my next demo once I get back from the PowerPoint. So I'll make sure that kicks off and is going before I switch over to PowerPoint. Yep, it already is. Go down here. You can see where it is. It's starting the failover on the, it's doing the prepare step. Now, I have not dove into what is actually going on. Every runbook I've shown you so far is a main or a process runbook or a sub-process runbook. I've tiered them in a way where the main ones, or the process runbooks, are the runbooks that control all the different steps in the process. Then the sub-process are more for, it gets a little more granular. And then the subroutines, which I'll go into later, are the individual runbooks that are executed sort of like a catalog of activities. I chose to create a catalog of runbooks as opposed to create an integration pack, and I'll go into why later. So I just want to make sure this is on its way. And it is. You can see it's off on the replica server, and it's already running on the primary server. So everything's going well so far. So I'm going to switch over to a PowerPoint and do a little bit more talking, and we'll bounce back. So what we just went through was Hyper-V Replica orchestrated plan failover and fail back. a glancing look at that because I did not even jump into any PowerShell. I do want to remind you, and if anyone has come in since, that everything you see here is available for you, all the PowerShell, all the runbooks, downloaded, documented, and with a demo video. So don't feel left behind. I just want to, trying to go slow. I know to audience that may speak different languages, and I talk too fast a lot, so I'm trying to go slow. So beyond Orchestrator. And when I talk about beyond Orchestrator, it's beyond just Orchestrator, PowerShell, and Hyper-V. The all-up story for System Center. This is my all-up story for System Center. I didn't consult anybody. I said I want to build a solution that includes Service Manager and VMM. Because currently, there's no tie between VMM and Hyper-V. So I took a square peg and jammed it in a round hole and made it work with Virtual Machine Manager as an interim sort of solution, because what you saw just now was one VM. In Orchestrator, doing something on one thing at a time is the easiest thing to do. What happens when you have to do it on two things at one time in parallel? Three things, a cloud's worth of things. That's where it gets really complex, because as you know, as you've been using Orchestrator, there's no sense of state. Orchestrator doesn't know what state things are in. So one of the main reasons I leverage VMM is to store the state, and I'll get into that. It may be interesting to you how I did that. So before I get into all that, component X could be anything. Could be ServiceNow, could be Remedy, could be whatever. Could be Service Manager, Microsoft or otherwise. Plus Orchestrator, plus whatever else. Orchestrator's the glue, remember. It's that thing that can connect back to System Center via integration packs, or to non-Windows machines via whatever protocol that would be allowed. So Orchestrator opens the door. Orchestrator has the ability to integrate to most any other thing in the data center or data center component. And I joke, not even the sky is the limit since we're dealing with clouds. You have an API to the moon? Let's do it. So, non-Microsoft? Yes. VMware has PowerCLI. That's PowerShell. We've leveraged that in the VMMT, or the MAT now. Web services, lots of things got web services now. We can interact with that, or other standard APIs. The point is, Orchestrator can bridge the heterogeneous gaps in the data center and public, private, hosted cloud offerings. Your process orchestrated. So all you need to start is a process. Because if you don't have a process, you're not ready to automate. If you have a whole bunch of stuff on the table, and you don't know what to do with it, you don't know what order to put those things in. Like when you start a puzzle, you usually start with the edges because those are easier to find. You've got to start somewhere. You need it, and for Orchestrator, the puzzle starts with the process. All right, enough PowerPoint. I'm going to jump over to the demo again. Internet's still up, good. Now it's getting a little dry humor for that. So let's kick off this other demonstration. And I called it the System Center HVR story because we are linking into the process VMM, Service Manager, as well as everything you've seen previously. So if you noticed, I had a shared folder in here, and that's where everything was being executed. Like the meat of the runbook, this is what was happening. I put it in a shared folder because it's shared by my single VM story, as well as I'm going to run multiple VMs against this story. And if you know Orchestrator, in order to execute things more than once at the same time, you need to bump up this. So if I throw one thing at it, it'll do one thing. If I throw three things at it, it'll do three things. If I do 10 things at it, it'll do, well, in this case, 5 things, and queue the other 5. The point is, I've built these runbooks that are available to you right now, plug, to be expandable and extensible. Why do I tell you that story? Well, this one level up, the process runbook, because I was just in a sub-process runbook, this level calls that same exact runbook that I was calling earlier. So I'm reusing work. That's one of the other best practices. If you can get away with it, do something once and reuse it multiple times. I know this isn't a best practices session, but as a Orchestrator guy, I try to make the best practices, pound them home. So what does this do? Well, because we're interacting with the other System Center products, I need hooks into those other System Center components. I have something that will take what's coming from Service Manager, turn it into something useful so I can update Service Manager. Then all this whole process, everything else is other System Center stuff. Everything but this highlighted activity. This is the one that kicks off that runbook that we saw earlier. But it's going to kick it off multiple times. So, actually this one is, sorry. No, that's notifications. And that's cleanup. Yeah, I was right. This is the one. Sorry. I haven't looked at these. They just work, so that's the best thing about automation. When it works, you don't remember what's going on. So I'm going to kick this off, but I'm not going to kick it off from Orchestrator. I'm going to show you how it's going to be kicked off from Service Manager. How many are familiar with the Service Manager web portal? How many of you configured it and set it up? Quite a few of you. So I recently put a blog post and video on how to do that. I called it Orchestrating Service Manager, Orchestrating Orchestrator. I couldn't fit the word Orchestrator in there any more times. I tried. So I take you through every single step to do that. If you haven't done it and you're kind of scared about it, it's all explained. There's the video. You could pause it. You could do whatever you want. So what I'm going to show you today is the result of connecting Service Manager and Orchestrator. And I have a service offering down here. It happens to be in the Disaster Recovery Management section. All of this is custom defined. You can do whatever you want here. For us and our demo, as a team, our demo system, we had all this stuff to show off. HVR plan failover, that looks like what I want. And now we're going to follow the bouncing servers. So there's that icon. Oh, there it is again, so I'm going to click there. Oh, looks like we're on the right track. All right, so I've simplified the request entry to where are the VMs right now? Well, you're going to have to go on my word if they're in the primary cloud. Well, I'll do you one better. I'll go to VMM. I'll show you got a whole bunch of clouds and stuff in here. One of them is called primary cloud. You can see I have those 3 VMs that were in Hyper-V. I'm simply showing you this as this is a container for these VMs so I can reference them. Because without that, I have no idea where they are, how to query them. I don't want to hard code anything. I want to make this as dynamic as possible. So I've put the VMs that I want to fail over and back into a cloud that I called primary cloud. I could have called it Bob. It wouldn't have made a difference. I have a replica cloud. These happen to be over on the other side too because they live on the other server. And you will see that they'll be started when we do the replica. There's a couple other things I did to tweak VMM to do my bidding, and I'll show you that now because it's pretty important to the process. And then I'll kick it off and we'll go deeper. If you check out the properties here, each one of the VMs has it and the clouds. I created 2 new custom properties, Replica Server and Replica State, and they have data in it as needed. Same thing for the clouds. Replica Server and Replica State. This is where I'm storing the state data. So if something fails, it'll say, I didn't fail this one thing. And it's checking for all 3 before it continues. So then I could send an email saying, well, 2 finished, 1 didn't, go figure it out. So that stuff I created ahead of time. Now, you'd be like, I don't know how to do that. I have runbooks, including those 56, that not only create these for both the scope of clouds and VMs, but also update them with information, delete the information, and remove them. So everything's done for you. You just have to press the right button in Orchestrator. So I don't want to talk too long on diving deep before I kick this off. So we're under the understanding that those 3 VMs, they're in Hyper-V, SPF test 01, 02, and 03. Each of them are in the primary cloud right now, as seen in VMM. And I'm going to, via Service Manager, web portal, choose primary cloud because that's where they live right now. You can see enter the name of the cloud associated with the virtual machines to be included in the HVR failover or failback. That's what I'm following instructions. And click next. Click submit. As you know, that has submitted a service request into Orchestrator or Service Manager. If we check out Service Manager in a second, we'll see, there it is, HVR plan failover request. If I open it up, and we're going to go to the workflow in there, we have two activities in that workflow. The first is to initiate a runbook, so it's a runbook activity. And the second is a manual activity, which will just sit there until I decide to close it. So I'm going to go to Activities. Wasn't lying to you. There's an RB4150 runbook activity. In a couple moments, it'll initiate that, which then initiates the runbook, and that's your sort of self-service portal for this demonstration. But you could have taken any amount of information from the customer or you or your operators and passed it through Service Manager into Orchestrator to do this whole thing. And that works for anything. That's the System Center self-service and orchestration story. I'm going to hit refresh. I assume it's going by now. It's running. So I'm not going to belabor that point much longer. I'll go back into Orchestrator. And you can see it's running. So it's the first thing it does is because the workflow activity from that service request is a GUID, and I need to associate that GUID with the actual SR GUID. So I use a runbook to do that, and I get the then service request GUID, which then I can use to update the ticket information, description, all that. I could add CIs to it. So I'm not just throwing this over the fence and not worrying about it. I'm updating it along the way. So I'm getting the CI for that specific cloud. I am invoking the association for that cloud CI to the SR. So if I open that SR, I can see it was associated with the primary cloud or whatever cloud you want. Then I'm updating the description with information based on what I chose. All of this stuff is happening at the same exact time as the initiation of the failover. Because as you know, in Orchestrator, you can execute things in multiple tracks at the same exact time. That's why the junction's in there. So it's waiting for both of these to be finished. Obviously, the SR updates will be done far before the HVR stuff. So let's take a look, a little deeper dive into what's going on here. We're not quite there yet, but I think, unless something went wrong, possible. See where we are. Oh, over here. Oh, it's currently updating VMM, those custom properties. So if we go into here, check out the custom properties in here. I forget that I had the step of, what am I replicating yet? Because I don't want to just force a replication on a machine that's not ready. Because if I had two of the three that weren't ready, I would need to get them in a replicating state. So I've written replicating to each one of these, and once I have a monitor for, are they all replicating? Are they all replicating? And once they are, it writes it to the primary cloud. And then we'll move on. So actually, when we dive back into Orchestrator, we'll see that everything's moving along. Now, could I have done this in a text file or a separate table? Absolutely. I did not want to introduce another element. I wanted to use something in System Center and it seems like an appropriate place to do it, because it's related specifically to the VMs and the clouds. So that's what I chose. You could do whatever you want, but this is what I've decided to do. Now you can see they're already stopped. If we go to, they all happened at the same time. I can't prove that to you, but if we go here into Orchestrator, we should see the shared one being executed 3 times at one time, where in the past it was executed once at one time. Now, you know, if you've used Orchestrator, how complex things get when you're doing things at the same exact time. I mean, that's one of the reasons you can't sometimes write to a text file, because it might cause some clashes or updates on a table or something like that. I'm lucky enough for the PowerShell calls to VMM, I could do those asynchronously, and they'll happen as they need to be executed. So we're going through. Each one of these will be in a little bit of a different state. But what I've done is, see this delay start? I've faked the fact that they're related. They're not related. They're just 3 VMs. But I wanted to show you, if you needed them to start up in back end, middle, and front end, I've added the ability, because they're running in parallel, to start because they're all going to start at the same time, I have a delay in here. What do you think I'm using to delay? Kind of a rhetorical question. I'm using start-sleep- whatever the configured delayed start time is for that VM. So what I did beforehand in VMM or Hyper-V, if we go to the properties or the settings and go into It's actually, there it is. This one's set to 0. 2 is set to 30. And the other one's set to 30. So it's reading that value in, and because they're executed in parallel, it's not going to start the third one until 60 seconds after the first one's been started, and the second one will start 30 seconds after the first one. So that's how you can start things up in a staggered order. And you can see that in the start times. I know it's hard to see, but the top 1 has been started for 1 minute, 22 seconds, 2 has been started for 48 seconds, and 3 has been started for 28 seconds. All of that was done via delayed start time, and me reading that value in, and then leveraging sleep. This run book gets more sleep than I do. Leveraging sleep in the run book to stagger things starting. That was a lesson we learned back in the DPM start and stop of the VMs days. So it started the failover, obviously. Well, it's done, actually. So it's on, all 3 of them are over here. Now, if that wasn't enough, I wanted to prove that happened. Like started up, these are the same VMs. So what I've done, as we showed you earlier, I had them auto log on, but I also had this failover log in here. Let's take a look at that failover log. You can see I've done some tests and demos in the past. This is today, I think, right? Oh, no, it's not. It's running the PowerShell right now. Let me close that. I'll open it again. You'll be like, well, how did you magically do that? I'll show you the magic. I'm not like those other magicians. All right, here we are. Planned failover complete. Well, where did that come from? Where did the timestamp come from? Well, I can tell you where planned failover complete came from. I'll show you. It came from, how many are familiar with key value pairs with Hyper-V and the guest? Wow, nobody, okay. It's kind of it's a WMI thing. It's a current thing. It does work. It worked in the older versions of Hyper-V, and now it still works. So I leveraged it as a sort of a, can I still do this for a demo sort of thing? You might want to or not. So if you're not familiar with, and nobody raised their hand, in the registry under virtual machine external, you can create key value pairs where I can write from the host via PowerShell and get data into the guest. And then I could leverage that data from within the guest to do stuff I want. Now I'm just writing to a log file. That's not very important. But what if I needed to change the IP address to something that I know is good? I could have the IP address in there as a key or a value. And then my PowerShell script could go, what's the IP address I need? And update the IP address. I could also run commands like net local group administrators. Who do I need to add to an administrator on this side? All that stuff is, this is the easiest way to transfer data back and forth between them. Now, are there future things that will be better? I hope, because this is kind of confusing for people. But there are blog posts I reference and the documents, and all the runbooks are available in the download I give for creation of these key value pairs, reading them, updating them, and removing them. So all of that, you don't have to learn it. You could just leverage what I've done. So we've seen that wrote to here, and it's failover complete. And it did that for all 3 of them. I mean, if you really want me to show, I'll go in here and show you. I'll show 2 of them. How's that? There's the other one. But we still have some outstanding questions. One of them is, well, I've sort of answered how that data got in here. But how did this text file get updated? I still didn't answer that mystery yet. And that is my second favorite use of, well, let's call it the third favorite use of automation. And in order, they'd be Orchestrator. Well, let's go PowerShell first, Orchestrator, it's got demoted, and scheduled tasks. So the scheduled task I have executes this script, very simple script. While that's loading, I'll open Task Scheduler. It's still loading. It's a race now. These are very small VMs. I don't even know if they have any, well, they have some memory, obviously, but not much. I created an automation-specific task that says 2 minutes after the machine starts up, execute that PowerShell script. And then that PowerShell script that's not very helpful, but it gets a current date time, it looks at the key, and then writes it to a file. I mean, it's as simplistic as it gets. It's all part of the blog post, though. But this PowerShell script sitting on this machine, and that may not be ideal for you. I mean, you could pass commands wholesale in through the KVPs and then execute them, too. I wanted to show that task scheduler is certainly possible, and executing a static PowerShell script, which you could pass values and stuff into this, too. So that's sort of all the components that I've touched upon here. If we go back into VMM, if everything executed properly, I've cleaned up after everything, and everything's back to normal, because I don't want to read from that. So I have a cleanup script that'll go and purge all that data. And if we go to the Replica cloud, you can see things are running here in the Replica cloud, and we've already proven, obviously, that things are running from 460. All right. So, what else? So, I could close this guy. All right. So I want to then, I guess I could show you Service Manager. That should be closed. Then I'm going to fail it back because I don't like leaving my stuff on the other side. So that SR has been closed. Let's take I got plenty of time. I'm going to dive into the completed request, and I'll show you how I interact with Service Manager. And I've done this before, obviously, you can see. All right, so I updated this description. That could be anything. That came directly from the orchestrator in one of the runbook activities that I created. I could actually modify anything in here, including user input. Note to anyone who's going to update user input with the Orchestrator runbook, make sure you have properly formatted XML. Otherwise, it'll crash Service Manager because it cannot format the non-XML for that field, and it'll crash Service Manager. So I have a blog post on that. It's sort of a tip and trick. If you're going to update user input from Orchestrator, it has to be in a specific format, and I have information on that. I learned that the hard way here, but lesson learned, and it's blogged. So as I showed you the activities before, we get 2 checkboxes here. Runbook activity did itself. Now, if I didn't add this manual activity in here, and manual is kind of an interesting concept here, it would have just closed the SR, and I might not want that. I might want to update the SR saying, well, the whole thing failed, let's investigate. Or one of the things failed, let's investigate. Or any other update. So I put a manual activity in here, but I close it automatically. Let me show you that in the runbook. So if we go into here, I have a runbook that I initiate for manual activity closure. And let me jump into that. So it's 115. So or I've hidden it from myself. I shared. No. This is embarrassing. I can't find my own runbooks. If I was better at looking at things, that'd be better. Fine, I'll look at the whole path. Subrunbooks 1.1 Service Manager. I guess I didn't see that. Oh, I was too clever for my own good. I actually leveraged pre-existing runbooks that I did for another project because I didn't want to recreate them. Great. So I created a set of Service Manager runbooks for a different project, and I leveraged them in this demo. It's nice. So here we are, 115. You saw I passed some information in there. Here, I'm getting the service request GUID, which we got from early on. Do we want to cancel it or complete it? Because I have the cancel mechanism. If things started to fail, I could just cancel. The SM runbook activity and the activity closure description. So I just get the manual activity, update it, or I cancel the SR. It depends on which status. Now if we go back into here, you can see in the manual activity, I've actually updated the description with something. You could do whatever you want there. You don't have to update description. I wanted to prove that I could. So, all right, so that's that bit. All right, that's the service manager stuff. All right, close that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kick this whole thing off again, but I'm going to choose Replica Cloud because that's where that stuff lives. And then I'm going to go back to some slides, talk, and then I'll take a deeper dive into the whole thing. Some of the PowerShell stuff that you may find interesting. So I'm going to kick off the automation. Should have just had something on the desktop to start the runbook, but Replica Cloud, next, and submit. All right. So let's go back to the slides real quick. So we just finished this demo, service delivery initiated, automated, planned, Hyper-V, Replica, failover, and right now, failback is running right now as we speak. So what's happening behind the scenes? I've kind of dove into this, but not 100%, so I'll get into that. Oh, it's already a demo. I forgot. I don't have any other slides, so let me, I'll leave that up there for a second while I readjust where my demo is. So what I'm going to do next, right now, actually, is dive into some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. I mean, you saw a whole bunch of high-level, it's doing something, but let's show you actually what it is doing. So we took a good, solid look at process and sub-process stuff, and even some sub-routine stuff in a different project that I leveraged for Service Manager. But what do you get if you download the stuff from that blog post? 56 runbooks. What's in those 56 runbooks? Well, I didn't stop at this is specific for the solution. I said KVP, well, people might not know about that. So instead of just update, like assume that you knew what you were doing, I created 4 runbooks. Do I leverage all these in the whole process? No. This is for your catalog. I can use this later on for another project, just like I did with Service Manager. I have a create KVP in guest VM, get information, which I do leverage. We'll remove and update. I guess I don't use get. I use update, though. You can see the logs. So I don't use remove because I want it to stay there. I don't use get because I don't need to query it because that's happening in the VM itself. I'm using PowerShell. And create. I did use create initially to do this whole thing. So that's 4 of the 56 runbooks that are available. I know they're small, but they may be useful to you because they're atomic and you can run them on your own. And I don't know what's easier, coming up with this on your own or just seeing it here and leveraging as you need it. Now, this is all that blue text is published data for Orchestrator or variables. Now, if you just copied this and pasted it into PowerShell, is it still useful? For me, I would say yes, because whenever I get examples off the internet, I like to look at them and tweak them and make them my, use for me. I'm not saying that you should do everything that I'm doing. In fact, a lot of the stuff that I baked into this, I actually give props to the people who actually created. I pulled a bunch of stuff on the internet, made it work for this, and then gave them credit on the blog post. So is this useful? Yeah, because all you got to do is take the red text, put your username, password in there, or you can gather that via get credential. You don't have to do it like this, but this is an automated way. The password's encrypted via Orchestrator, so I don't have to worry about that. Pass your server name, KV. So you could just take this PowerShell. Every runbook has a whole bunch of baked PowerShell in it. So that's just an example for that. In fact, every single one of these runbooks, except for some of the VM-specific stuff, are just orchestrated PowerShell. Same thing with the VMM setup. I'm using the PowerShell activity that comes with VMM to create those custom properties. Is that something you could have done on your own? Sure. That's super simple PowerShell. I guess my value to this was figuring out that I can use that to store state. Now you can do that if you want. You create your own custom properties and store state as something that you can pass data back and forth for VMM and Orchestrator. And this, obviously, if you just wanted to do it at the cloud level, delete VM. Or delete that out of the PowerShell script. You just want to do VM, I didn't want to have a different PowerShell script for both cloud and VM. I could use this as a parameter, pull it from the initiate data. So I could do this on the fly and use this for lots of different scoped stuff. So those are the two sort of extra secret sauce for this process, but let's get into the replication stuff. As I said in the past, if things weren't enabled for replication, I created a script that will enable them. Now, a lot of the scripts you're going to see that are baked in here look very similar. They have a bunch of stuff at the top, username, password, primary server, replica server, that stuff. And then try catch block. I secure the password. Then I do this magical invoke command. How many of you are aware of the PowerShell integration pack that I built that was on CodePlex for a while, and now it's on TechNet Gallery? A couple of you. That way is completely fine if you want to use that. But the evolution for me for executing PowerShell has turned into this method because I don't have to install an integration pack. I don't have to deal with credentials in the options menu. And I built that before we had encrypted variables in Orchestrator. Now we have encrypted variables. That's less important. And I'd rather just manage global settings than manage both global settings and global configuration. So for me, I leverage invoke command and this method of execution of, I can invoke any command I want, any set of commands here. This happens to be enable VM replication, and I'm passing a bunch of stuff in. And I realized near the end of this that everything, well, I guess in the middle, that all my PowerShell scripts for this looked the same. They were just named something different and passing some different command. So I created a generic VM script, which the parameters are, what's the command you want to execute, what's the server name, and what's the VM. So I could have done the entire process just executing this in lots of different ways. And to show you the power of how dynamic Orchestrator can be, I don't want to zoom in too much. That VM PowerShell command from initiate VM PS execution, I could put a start-VM in there. I could put a whatever-VM in there. I'm passing the VM name in there. And I have email integration into this whole thing, too. It just finished the failback, if you saw that pop in. But this is as generic as it gets. This is how I would execute generic VM commands for Hyper-V in Orchestrator or PowerShell, specifically Orchestrator. So this is sort of like a generic integration pack object for VM commands. It's just here's the run book for it. So again, all of this is available as part of that download. I got a lot of other stuff in here. I basically went to the website that said, here are the Hyper-V replica commands. And I built out a run book that takes in data and outputs data as needed for each one of those things. So I wrapped Orchestrator around every single relevant command for Hyper-V replica. And that way, even measure VM replication or test VM replication connection, maybe you'll never use those. But if you wanted to, they're there. I use get VM replication all the time. That's how I know what server it's on at any given time. But could I have just taken that object that's in that sub-run book and put it in the main run book? Of course, but that makes it less extensible. And now I could execute this by itself. Had nothing to do with either story, and just execute and type in my replica server, primary server, port, and authentication type, and it'll get this information. I hit tester by accident. I might as well do this. Put my money where my mouth is. If I spelled Kerberos right. So this was what, test connectivity? So this is testing the replication connectivity between the two servers. And I'm going to see, and it failed because I probably typed something wrong, but inability error. Did I not type it? Did I not paste it? Whatever. So I guess I shouldn't have done that, but you could do testing. And it's a testing console, and I'm not logged in from there. I'm doing everything. And be careful with your runbook tester because it runs it as you're logged in right now, and my credentials currently don't have that. That's why if you press start, it uses credentials that are available. So, lesson learned. Well, this time. So, there's a lot of PowerShell here. There's a lot of different commands here. Like for VMM, we have some start VM. I'm starting it via Hyper-V. Could I have started it via VMM? Yeah, it was just a choice. Because I started this whole process out without VMM, without Service Manager. I just did it Hyper-V. You could swap those as needed. One of the most valuable activities that is shipped with SP1, with Orchestrator and VMM, is this PowerShell activity. Because it takes care of everything for you as far as credentials and stuff, and allows you to just execute a PowerShell script. For this instance, this is get custom property value. So I just put a bunch of stuff in there. You have to name a variable and put it here, but then you're good to go. You can execute whatever you want from that VMM server. So it handles a lot of the remote PowerShell. It handles a lot of the 64-bit, 32-bit issue. But that invoke command that I showed you also handles that 32-bit, 64-bit. And that was the reason I built that IP in the first place, is because I needed a stopgap. I'm not saying the gap has been filled, but we have another method that I prefer to use. Let's see. Oh, for the cloud stuff, I did do VMM-specific activities, getting VM and updating VM. But a lot of this is just PowerShell and not using the actual activities, which that's a personal choice. But some stuff you'll find in the VMM integration pack, like the service template stuff. I'll give you one example. If you're deploying service templates with the activity, it's synchronous. So if you want to run them multiple at one time, my advice to you is to go asynchronous, and the only way to do that is PowerShell currently. I put a DCR in for it, but it's just, I've been leveraging PowerShell more and more and more in the recent months, even within Orchestrator. And that's obviously, well, it's blatantly obvious from all of the work that I've done with this deliverable here. So I'm going to go and check on the status of stuff. Looks like everything's good. And we're going to pop into one of these and check the log. Go down here, and we can see that the failback and failover is complete. So I talked for a sufficient amount of time for things that be failed over and failed back, and this happened for all three machines. If we take a look at the timing, they were started 30 seconds apart or thereabouts. So the whole process was used. I could run this all day, every day. I could schedule this for once a quarter, kick this off. It could be, the cloud can be 10 VMs. It could be one, well, I guess it could be one VM. It could be one or more VMs. You'd have to up the parallel on that runbook if you want to use it. But the reason I built this for planned failover was that I know, with unplanned failover, it means this side's completely gone. I disconnected 459, and basically on 460, whatever I have over here is what I got. And to automate that, I could create a runbook, or you could leverage the start runbook that says, start this. That's about it, because the other side's completely gone, so it doesn't really matter what I do over here. In those scenarios, you'll likely have some manual processes, and one of them is but if you need to start everything that's on the Replica server, you have a script for that I've included in the runbooks to start all the stuff on Replica server. So while it's not baked into the story, there's no real story. I'm not going to take out half my infrastructure just to show it. The planned failover was just more interesting to me. And the test, how many have used the test functionality for Replica? Not one person. You could do it here as well at any time manual. You could do test failover. Or you could, and all it does is spins up a separate machine, doesn't touch anything, just makes a copy, push dash test, and you can start it up. The runbook will do that too, but it's not that impressive. So, and then you could just stop test. So, all right, let's go back. I think I did show everything there. Well, if you want to, I could prove that Service Manager finished too. Yeah, that's an old one it's not related to this project. VMM should be cleared out of anything as far as custom properties are concerned. They're cleaned out. All that is baked in. So I built these mostly for demo, but you pick and choose what you want to use for implementations. You know, there should be enough there to at least start thinking in that direction. Now, is this the be-all, end-all? No. This is, let's call it a little past midway in the evolution of some of the recovery options that we have from Microsoft. If you come to Tech Ed in New Orleans later this year or Europe, we're going to have, I'm going to do a similar demo to this, but it's going to be talking about things, the next stage of evolution there. So, and as I said kind of cheesily in my Channel 9 interview yesterday, if there's whatever stage of evolution this stuff is in, if there's something to be orchestrated, I'll probably be there. So let me pop back to the PowerPoint. So that all-important blog, we've actually changed our URL, but this one will redirect for a while. Go to that Building Clouds blog. It has so much information that you'll probably get lost. But we have tracks set up. Sorry for keep switching, but I could have brought it up over there. But this is the Building Clouds blog. Click on Automation track if you're interested in automation. If you're here, you're likely interested in automation. And you'll see a bunch of posts in there. A bunch of them are for me, some are for Jim. I also post in the IT Service Management track. But this blog, going forward, is going to be our team's definitive place for solutions. In fact, yesterday, Mark Gosson posted the MAT toolkit posting on how to, migrate from VMM, or from whatever, you know what I'm talking about, that other guys to VMM, or Hyper-V. So, and then there's a whole bunch. And there's a Just for Fun track where, I'm going to plug this, why not? So a couple years ago, I used the Connect to create a run book with just my motion. And this is the exact likeness of me. So we do some fun stuff too. We also did and I wrote the PowerShell for it actually, Surface Pro. We took 4 Surface Pros. I don't know if you've seen the video. Took 4 Surface Pros, put Windows Server 2012 on them, and did live migration, tabletop live migration. So the video is here. I encourage you, if you want to just take some, the video is actually very well done. It's got a nice music to it. So, but that's my hand and stylus there, kicking off PowerShell on a surface to live migrate VMs around 4 different surfaces. So lots of fun stuff over on Building Clouds, and a lot of good information over there too. So I've put quite a bit of information up on TechNet Gallery. I've moved all my old IPs, refreshed the information, and put them on TechNet Gallery. I've also put all the runbooks and everything. I've done an Azure set of runbooks. I've done this set of runbooks. I did that PowerShell for the live migration. So if live migration, you don't have to have surfaces to do it. If you're interested in live migration, I put that script up there. If you would, follow us on Twitter, building_clouds. That's where, if you don't want an RSS feed to the blog, you could just watch our Twitter account. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I tweet everything that I do or Jim does, something related to automation, since I'm sort of the de facto automation track guy. So that's where that goes. And, I guess that's the end. We want to hear from you, so do that. And the rest of the end of the slide. So I tried to get to the 15:21, so I think I thank you for staying. And if you have questions, please come to the mics or come up or whatever. And I appreciate your watching. Thank you.